four-day week as well, a four-day working week. Labour, who previously, as I remember, have been quite encouraging of the four-day week, they're now cracking down on the idea, slamming the first council to have adopted it. This is South Cambridgeshire Council, who introduced the scheme, has been slated by the Community Secretary Steve Reid when he expressed his deep disappointment with the approach. So that's a kind of big turnaround from where they once were. Of course, the way this works is that staff receive 100% pay for 80% of their previous contracted hours. Nice work if you can get it, some might say. Let's speak to Joe Ryle, four-day week campaigner. Lucky we got you on a Wednesday, I guess, Joe. I don't know what your favourite day off might be. But here it is, South Cambridgeshire Council. They said everything's tickety-boo. They said their staff are happy. They said productivity is up. They said job applications to come and work for them is through the roof. But Steve Reid and others think very differently. What do you think's gone wrong here?
Well, we think Steve Reid hasn't really looked at the evidence properly. I mean, this is the first council trial of a four-day working week, following on from kind of hundreds and hundreds of companies in the UK that have successfully implemented four-day working weeks in ways that have been good for the employer and good for the worker. So this was the first kind of test, if you like, in the public sector, alongside a trial that took place in Scotland last year, run by the Scottish government. Now, what both of those trials have shown is that, yes, the public sector can have, gain these advantages as well as the private sector has. It's not only been good for the well-being of staff, but also for those employers, productivity going up. And in the case of this council, they've actually saved taxpayers' money. They've saved £400,000 a year because their job recruitment and job retention is much better. So I'm really disappointed. We're really disappointed in the government. We think they've kind of ignored the evidence and have got this wrong. I mean, it is, I suppose, how you crunch the numbers, and people will see things in different ways, and some of that largely depends on where they sit politically and the like. I mean, they claim that they've had improved services, but of course, I'm sure South Cambridgeshire is a lovely place to be, and everything's tickety-boo over there. But most local authorities, you ask anyone about their local authority, whether it's about potholes, bins, lampposts, anything else, most, I think, would suggest that there is massive room for improvement from their local council. So you could say they're starting from a very low base on this kind of stuff. And you could, I suppose, argue in some respects, Joe, that until, this is local authorities, it's not the chocolate factory around the corner or the woman who owns the wool shop who are completely independent, it's up to them. It's taxpayers' money, and people want to see a return for their money. And if this was the pattern and it was proven over a longer period of time and across more local authorities, maybe it would have a little more merit. At the moment, a lot of constituents just simply see services not working and local civil servants agitating to work less hours. Well, that's why basically all we're calling for is more trials. We want to see the kind of next wave of council trials get underway because, there are trials that have already taken place across Europe, and we do work much longer full-time hours than most of the rest of Europe, and we don't think this is, not good for workers in terms of well-being, but also not good for the economy. Having millions of workers that are kind of burnt out, stressed, overworked doesn't produce good results for anyone. So, I also agree, you're right, councils are struggling, council performance isn't great across the whole country, but it's interesting that in the case of this first four-day week council, they're actually in the top quarter in terms of performance, so they're performing much better than the rest of other councils. So on that basis, you'd assume, well, why don't we be a bit open to this? Why don't we see if we can do some more trials, get some more evidence, see what can happen? And it just seems ridiculous for the government to shut this down when it has been so positive. Yeah,
as you rightly say, this was the government that were very, very positive about four-day working weeks, and then they got into power and it all changed. Joe, thank you. Joe Ryle, four-day week campaigner, thank you to him. George Madgwick is the Reform UK leader of Portsmouth City Council. George, good afternoon to you. So nice to have you with us. So your council there, 4 day a week, 5 day a week? I'm sure you work 7.
7 would be nice. No, we're currently a 5 day a week, but it's interesting what you just said, actually, because you're right. Labour, even locally here in Portsmouth, have been touting for a 4 day week for years. So it's really interesting that the government have now taken this stance on cracking down on that.
So in terms of, many people just simply say, George, look, the workplace is different. We live in a kind of digital world. So, there's stuff you can do at home that you could never have done before. So I know that's a slightly different argument. If you're on a 4 day week, you don't have to do stuff from home, but it kind of all feeds into the same subject. So we have to get used to the fact that you know, things change. Once upon a time, it was crazy that anybody would not work at the weekend. And people, I'm sure, back in the day, did 7 days a week and goodness knows what else. So things change and we've all got to get used to it. Any merits in that?
Listen, I mean, the world doesn't stop, right? Every day of the week, people have still got issues, people have still got problems, and a council is there. You're paying your council tax for a service to have access to these services throughout the week. And I think that already people struggle getting out of hours help at weekends, and people still do have problems at weekends. There is still things, burst pipes in council areas. There's still social housing issues. There's still people made homeless at weekends. These issues still exist, but the council is already closed. And our council at the moment take a softer stance on a Friday, so there is less officers in on a Friday. It's not a 4-day working week, but people can work from home and more flexibly. But already we've noticed a problem with our customers, with our local taxpayers, that have found the issue with that service not being there for them. And that is the root cause here. We're providing a service. This isn't a private company like a hospitality business or something like that where you've got the flexibility.
100%.
We're providing a public service, and a public service needs to be available when the public need it.
And you just hit the nail on the head with that term, taxpayers, because that's ultimately what I think politicians over the years have completely forgotten about, who pays their wages and what we're paying them for. We know that local authorities are really under the cosh financially. It doesn't matter where they're, even if you're running it rather well, there's still huge difficulties in getting the right funding for a multitude of projects. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, whether it's potholes, whether it's bins, whether it's, you know, your high street Christmas decorations, all manner of things to consider. So there's this kind of an optics thing as well about this, isn't there, George? If stuff isn't working as efficiently as it should do, and your council don't go to work for a fifth of the week, that's a terrible look for the taxpayer.
Yeah, it's not good. And I think the other thing that we need to highlight here is the local economy. A lot of the local economy around council buildings has been built up with shops, restaurants, bars, everything like that, services to provide those council staff those services. And during COVID, we noted, especially in London, where local hospitality industry absolutely got destroyed by people working from home. And in Portsmouth, we got like 1,500 officers that work from our building. If we then cut that down on a Friday, that would be a dramatic loss to the local economy. The only nuanced point here is what your previous commentator said, is that councils do have a real problem maintaining and recruiting staff. It's a real difficult time right now, because why would you be a solicitor in, say, a council building for 80,000 a year when you can go into the city and get the same job for $250,000 a year? You know, so there is a real big issue with retention, but that I don't think can be solved by a 4-day week.
Great to have you on, George. Thank you for your time. George Madgwick, he is the Reform UK leader of Portsmouth City Council. Very hesitant about the idea on this one. Just run over with me. I do find these conversations quite fascinating in terms of the hours you work and how it can change. And many people listening to this will be working in jobs where it would be literally impossible. I mean, just impossible certainly impossible to work from home, but also impossible just to reduce their hours. Or they don't work for organisations where that could begin to function in any kind of efficient way. But I'm simultaneously aware that the kind of work day, the schedule, if you like, has completely changed. It's changed in lots of ways. It even started to change before COVID. I mean, that was the big accelerator of all of this. But I had a mate round the corner from me who started to do, I think he worked from home on Friday or did half day on Friday. There was something like that. And that was, you know, a good few years before COVID set in. It was already becoming a thing as many workplaces realised, and I guess it's dependent on the workplace, that they function better because the staff were a little happier and everyone all round was a winner. Is that your experience? Do you like the idea that you don't work Fridays or Mondays in some jobs? I mean, my railway station car park is dead on those 2 days because people like to do a 4-day week or a 3-day week, and the rest they do from home. Let's get a